What's up, St. Louis? It's your host, Luke Farrell of the STL Bucket List Show. The STL Bucket List Show is driven by Bomarito Automotive Group. Bomarito is Missouri's #1 car dealership with over 20 locations, so I guarantee that there's one in your neighborhood. Since the 1970s, Bomarito has sold over 1 million cars, and John and the entire team made us feel completely comfortable when we picked up our new vehicle recently for the family. So I can't thank the Bomarito team enough for driving this episode forward, and enjoy the show.
If you want to hear about St. Louis, tune into the Bucket List Show weekly. Hear what Marissa and Luke say. It drops every Wednesday. Got a dope new guest every single week. Buckle up for the ride. Who's it gonna be? Who's on the show today? They rep St. Louis. What to do in the loo on a late night, or maybe what to do on a date night. Yeah, Bucket List has you covered. They know what's going on. What's going on? They'll give you, hey, 18 different things to do, or 19 if you need one more to choose. Yeah, this city is a place we call home. A place we call home, yeah.
What's up, St. Louis? We are back with another episode of the STL Bucket List Show. We've been doing this podcast now for 2 years, highlighting the people, places, and events that make St. Louis special. We have a super special episode with some new developments going on in St. Louis, but before we get into it too deep, I just want to shout out my wife. Another week she's not at the show. She's at home taking care of our beautiful daughter. She will be back soon. We might have to bring baby to the studio, but we'll make it work. And then shouting out our sponsors, of course, Bomarito Autosport for driving the podcast forward. Thank them for getting our family car ready. Our friends over at Four Hands Brewing Company for getting us right when we're a little bit thirsty. And then, of course, the Regional Arts Commission of St. Louis, the largest public funder of arts and art organizations right here in St. Louis. Got to shout them out. Got the big neon sign behind us for St. Louis Arts. And I don't know if you knew this, Doug, but more people travel to St. Louis for art than they do for sports. And people think St. Louis is a sports town, but you in the art world, you know that St. Louis is actually an arts town as well.
Absolutely. Although, frankly, I am kind of surprised to hear that.
Yeah. Well, people think of St. Louis. They're like St. Louis, but you got to think, okay, the Fox, the Muni, all these huge events, now these new music festivals, all these like CAM, Third Degree Glass, all these different things that people come in to see. But before I get into it, I want to introduce you. So we got Doug Auer here, one of the people behind what's going on in the Delmar Makers District, one of the co-founders of Third Degree Glass Factory, Made Makerspace, Craft Alliance, and of course now the new Delmar Makers District. So welcome to the show.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it. Glad to be here.
Glad to meet you. And I want to start by reading a little bit about the Delmar Makers District, and then I want you to kind of put it into your own words.
Yeah,
so,
you bet.
This was on your guys' website, so I'm sure you had a little bit in writing this, maybe.
It's been a while, but it'll make sense.
So the Delmar Makers District is driven by a concept of live, make, and sell, giving current and prospective artisans and makers a place to learn, create, and thrive while injecting new life into a stretch of the Delmar, into a stretch of Delmar. The Makers District creates a destination for both locals and tourists to create, shop, learn, and socialize.
Yeah.
So what does that mean?
Pretty
to you?
good summary. It started a long time ago for me. We opened Third Degree back in 2002. And at the time, frankly, we were just looking for a cheap piece of real estate, right? So this particular section of Delmar was neglected, to say the least. And our vision was really simple. We just wanted a place where people could come and make things out of glass, but also hopefully be educated and entertained. And that can run the gamut from literally just browsing the gallery and, enjoying the work to taking a class and learning how to make glass yourself. So that was going pretty well. And I guess it was about 15 years in that my co-founder, Jim McKelvey, and I were celebrating with the rest of the team. And he said, man, this is great, but we got to do more, because here we are 15 years later and no one's paying attention still. And we had this very brief conversation about taking what we were doing at Third Degree and extrapolating it beyond glass. So by that, I mean inviting other people that make things to the area, hopefully creating more venues, more places that you can learn things, you can be entertained, you can purchase the goods and services that are being crafted. So that was the start of the idea of the district.
And that was 2017, roughly.
Yeah, the numbers get fuzzy, Let's see, 2017. Yeah, it probably was the summer of 2017. Nice work.
Well, I just did 2002 plus 15. It was.
Thank you. Yeah. So, and then coincidentally, Tech Shop, which is the precursor to Made, the makerspace that we now have, they closed the doors the day before Thanksgiving in 2017.
Mhm.
That's how I referenced that.
There you
go. And we were lucky enough to work out the deal that we were with Craft Alliance to move all of the equipment to Delmar. So the funny story that many people don't know is that we signed the deal with Cortex to get the equipment over to Delmar, but we didn't have a building for it. So, but pushed it forward, and 3 weeks later, we had a building secured, and 1 year to the day of their closing, we opened the doors
Mhm.
in 2018. So MADE became this second anchor
Mhm.
in the district that we really like. It's kind of weird to think about the district without it
Mhm.
at this point.
Yeah.
And MADE's still trying to kind of get its feet under it. We've got we had about 250 members, but we recently changed the model and we're rebuilding that
Mhm.
model and rebuilding the member base. Hugely important that we do that. The next big win was Craft Alliance. So this was all kind of coming together, and started talking to the then executive director, Mark Witzling,
Mhm.
and they were thinking about moving. And we were able to make it attractive enough for them to come join us. And at the same time, we were opening up the Magic House at MADE.
Mhm.
Now, this is important too.
That's
So
huge. I remember that.
I want to make sure I say this, because when I say to people like, "Oh, have you heard of MADE?" People say, "Oh, yeah, absolutely. I bring my kids there all the time."
Mhm.
I'm like, yes, the Magic House at MADE. We have this little bit of a branding name
So the Magic
recognition
House,
thing.
explain that though. So
Yeah.
like these are like inside. It's like a section of what you guys have there.
Right. So this is the trick. So MADE is the adult maker space on the first floor, but the Magic House has a kids maker space on the second floor.
Mhm.
But because Magic House is the Magic House,
Yeah,
and
huge
they-
brand.
yeah, they've been around for 50 something years.
Yeah.
People associate MADE with the Magic House more than they do anything else.
Yeah.
So my
For
goal
better
is,
or worse, but like
it's not a bad thing,
Yeah.
unless you're MADE, and then you want more people to know about.
Of what you guys
Us.
are doing. It's
Yeah.
not just a kid spot. Yeah.
Correct. So hopefully we'll keep increasing the name recognition of MADE, the adult maker space. But it's a great place. Tools everywhere, and
Yeah.
now free classes and training as
What
well.
I think of it is as a third space, and what you guys are doing is you're creating these third spaces. And in 2002, like you had this idea of like, I need that space for me. Whether was it just a hobby for you? Was glass blowing a hobby for you, or did?
Yeah, I don't think I
is
could
that how
really-
you guys connected? Or I mean,
Yeah.
tell us about that story about how that even started. Because 2002, I mean, that's 22 years ago. It's a long time ago.
Man, I know. I was just a kid. So I got introduced to glass in college, and my degree is in industrial design. I came back to St. Louis and thought I'd get a real job designing forks or cars or toothbrushes or something. But ended up teaching glass at WashU, kind of on a whim. Walked in and got a job as an adjunct professor there. And Jim McKelvey is an alumni, but also blew glass while he was there in the 80s. So long story short, we met through that connection. Worked in that studio a few times, and then just started talking about this idea of having a studio and creating this resource for St. Louis.
Yeah.
And then it sort of just ballooned into what it is today. I really did think it would just be a hobby. I thought I'd get a quote, real job.
and then do this for fun on the weekends.
Yeah. But it became this event venue and
Yeah.
retail gallery, and now we do custom work all the time. Whether it's custom awards or custom installations, residential, commercial, you name it.
Yeah.
And then we still do what we started, which is we teach people
Yeah.
how to make glass.
Yeah, I've been seeing you guys been listing a bunch of classes, but I think that's cool because I found out about you guys from a wedding venue. So now
Yeah.
everybody's finding out about different things about what you're doing.
Absolutely.
And then I went to a networking event there when Square was in town, and they were doing this big pop-up, and it was a networking event. So now you're doing these Friday events,
Yeah.
getting people down there. But what I love about what you guys are doing, and we'll talk about the food and all that in a little bit because you know
Sure.
the food's
Yeah,
coming.
yeah.
But what I like about what you guys are doing is it's you're bringing other makers in. You know,
Absolutely.
you're diversifying who you're bringing in, and that's what you're trying to build in the neighborhood. When you think of the Delmar Makers District, it's this neighborhood in between, close to the Central West End, close to Kingshighway, and how you guys are creating this neighborhood. Because when you moved there in 2002, it was simply
Yeah.
just because you wanted to find a spot that was big enough for you
Well,
at the time. Or, did you see
yeah.
anything in the neighborhood when you guys moved there?
Oh, absolutely. So there was, don't get me wrong, there was a conscious choice there to put ourselves between the Loop and the Central West End. No question.
Yeah.
I think it's the question for St. Louis is really like, how does that happen? How do we have these pockets of this vibrant activity? And then you would think that would just sort of connect itself between these two dots.
Yeah.
And we thought that even just us adding ourselves, which I guess maybe that's a bit arrogant, we thought that would
Do the
connect a
job.
couple of dots or at least start the process. It didn't really. But now, like, look at all the stuff happening. We got Delmar Divine that Maxine Clark put together, like it's amazing.
Incredible.
Obviously, the loop keeps moving east.
Mm-hmm.
Joe just kept pushing that forward and keeps succeeding in that way. And now we've got things happening to the east, to the north. We've got another development. The Kingsway development group is doing work on the other side of Kingshighway on the east side, which is near Launch Code there. There's a new co-working space that's under construction right now with Kevin Bryant's team. Lots of stuff happening, right? What I learned in the last few years, though, is that it's not easy, right? Like these, there's so many neighborhoods and so many groups all kind of bordering each other that it's a real challenge to get people at the table and get everyone on the same page.
Right.
It's been interesting. It's been a good learning experience.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things where, and Ben, who we'll talk about in a minute, talked about what he did with Tower Grove. It's like you go to a neighborhood that was once neglected and you bring life to it. And a lot of that times, like, life is revolved around food and life. So you guys are doing real estate. You guys have homes in the area. You guys are building up the area, but every great neighborhood has great restaurants. So what, are you the ambassador? Are you the one selling people on coming here? Like, tell us about that process of how you're getting not only the group over at the Fountain and Steve's Hot Dogs and Alpha Brewing, but like how you're getting Ben Poremba to come to the neighborhood, and stuff like that.
Crazy story. So, we acquired some property over the last few years, and I, honestly wouldn't have thought that we'd be sitting here about to talk about what will be 8 restaurants opening in the next 12 months. That was not on the radar. There was no
restaurant groups too.
There was no plan that like really had that outlined. One of my neighbors, Jason Johnson, is a local developer with Renaissance Development, and he literally is my neighbor. I live near the district as well, and we just started talking, and he was like, I want to help. Like, this is my backyard too. So he actually, I think, was really how Ben got over to the district initially. And then after that, and same for what we're calling Makers Locale, which is the complex that will house Steve's Hot Dogs, second location, the Fountain on Delmar, also a second location. I need to make sure I say this, because people are like, oh, are they closing the other ones? No, they're not.
Yeah.
And
it's more of like an express one now.
You got
too.
it. Yeah. And then Alpha Brewing, also a new location. And then in that complex, when we planned it, we didn't know, but now it'll also include Nixta. Sort of the reimagining of Nixta will happen there too. So we've got hot dogs, ice cream, beer, and Mexican, tacos. So something for everybody. And there's this beautiful outdoor space that will be shared by all of them. We want this to be a family-friendly place, right? Like congratulations on your new daughter. And as someone with 3 kids, I know it can be hard to find places where you feel like you can go take your kids
with everyone, with
everybody, have a drink, like something fun for them to do, where they're not just sitting at the table being like, Dad, can we leave? I mean, there's a few examples in town, don't get me wrong. Like they love playing with the video games at Four Hands, or I could come up with some other places,
but the diversity in food too. Oh, you don't want Mexican food?
Right.
Oh, here's a hot dog. Boom. Now I can get great.
Absolutely. And you'll be able to like move freely between all these restaurants. So if you want a beer and your wife wants a boozy ice cream drink, you've got it. Right next door.
So how did that idea, tell us about that process. So you had this plot there and you're like, okay, was that always what you wanted to do? Like, how did that become, like, you knew you needed food in the area because you probably were like, hey, where do I go to lunch? I'm like, it would be really nice to have somewhere next door to go to lunch.
Yeah, for sure. It all happened organically. It was sort of one after the next. There's some shared ownership with Steve's and the Fountain, so that kind of is a no-brainer. Alpha, we just got introduced to Derek at Alpha, and it just started to click. Frankly, what we focused on with all of them, or what we made sure was clear to them, was that we really wanted the art of what they're making and serving to be visible. It's not going to be super visible necessarily for all of them, but the Fountain, if you've been, you can see them making the ice cream dishes right in front of you. People like watching that. Steve's Hot Dogs, the line will be open. You can see the kitchen line happening. Alpha's kind of showpiece will be this giant 20-foot still. Because the distinction here is that they're actually moving into the distilling world as well. So they won't be brewing on site here on Delmar. They'll actually just be doing the distillery.
Yeah.
I think it's now shifted to vodka, but I could be wrong. They're doing whiskey, I think, at their existing location. We'll see what actually happens. But there's this beautiful 20-foot tall glass jewel box that the still will be in and visible from the street. It's going to be fantastic.
Yeah, and then people can just walk in there, look at it. And
Absolutely.
Then I think next day they're doing that Bar Limon. They're going to have like some fresh seafood, some ceviches, like all that on there. I'm sure they're going to be cutting up some fish like right there in front of people. So I don't know. I mean, it's going to be
I don't know either. Ben's got a lot of ideas. And there potentially will be like a taco truck out front during the weekdays, so you can grab a quick lunch.
Yeah.
It's happening kind of fast and organically.
So those fell into line, the locale there. But then, you had other real estate there. So now there's 2 more restaurants coming.
Right.
Another 2. I know Beyond Sweet is over there as well, too.
Yeah, Beyond Sweet opened
She invited me out. I haven't been yet, but it looks amazing.
Yeah, I tell you what, the place is packed all the time. I keep thinking I'm just going to pop in, but it's so busy all the time that I just kind of keep walking by going like, oh, it's so busy. I'll wait till it's not busy.
Exactly.
But it's busy. So I mentioned 8 restaurants. So we've got 4 at Makers Locale that I just ran through. But the next 2 to open will be Ben's new concept, Esca, and then Florentine. So Esca will be dinner. It's amazing. It's going to be charcoal. Everything's grilled or baked with charcoal. It's the sole cooking source. And then, it's kind of this fire and ice, raw, seafood bar / grilled. That's going to be opening here very soon. I won't give a firm date because that's Ben's deal.
Yeah, it's coming though.
And then Florentine will be more breakfast related. So I think coffee. He's talking about doing some really healthy choices for breakfast bowls or
some fresh juices.
Like you got it. So super excited about those 2 coming up here. I think it's safe to say within the next month we'll see both of those open. Yeah, yeah, yes. Knock on all the wood. And then the final kind of piece of the puzzle. So we're up to 6 if you're keeping track. The new Elia and Olio complex, which actually today I got the building permit approval.
Wow,
phone call. So
that's awesome.
Timeline on that is TBD, but we're definitely pushing to get that happening. But super excited for all of Ben's fans to have these other options.
Yeah, and it's amazing because it's right there on one street, similar to what they've done before. So, are you a big foodie yourself? Because it seems like now all this food is falling into your lap, and now
I don't think I can call myself a foodie. I appreciate good food. Yeah. But at kind of the tail end of 3 young kids, I can't say my wife and I got out much. Yeah. In the last 14 years.
Now you will be able to though.
It's starting to happen more. Yeah. So we've been hitting more and more places as our kids get a little older, and we have that opportunity, or I should say we make that opportunity.
So we talk about make and sell, and I think of make as the food, sell as the shops and different things that you guys have going on, but now we talk about living there.
Yeah.
So tell us about the real estate there. Are we seeing a big uptick in population? Is that on the way?
Great question. It's on the way, right? So I think I'm confident we will see the uptick. We've done a few projects. There's quite a bit of vacant homes in the area that are in serious need of work. We took a few on over the last few years, and we've completed half a dozen. These were historic tax credit rehabs of all vacant houses at the time that we purchased them. It's not our intention to be residential landlords, to be honest. So our goal is actually we were hoping that would jumpstart other developers coming into the neighborhood. We've seen it. So we've seen it. We are seeing a few more. It's happening.
You just wanted to show people it's possible and then say, hey, here's this, and you guys run with it so we can focus on other stuff.
Absolutely. Yeah. There's talk. We have some vacant land on Delmar itself. There is definitely, we're kicking around ideas of more residential development, but it's tricky. The numbers have to work, and we really want it to be a place where, people that, I hate to say it, but this starving artist idea, like we need some affordable housing. Yeah. One of the big challenges is that the housing on either side of Delmar, north or south, they're actually quite large homes, and being the age that they are, it's extremely expensive, 1, to rehab them, but 2, to also maintain them, heat them, cool them,
sell it to a young family.
It's tough. Yeah.
We've got a family, any family.
Yeah. There are plenty of people in this city that are familiar with this, whether you're talking about Lafayette Square or Soulard or, Tower Grove area, all of these beautiful old homes. But it's difficult to keep them
Yeah.
fully maintained.
Yeah. So it's like trying to find a way to, like you said, find affordable housing because you don't want to turn it into where nobody can even afford to live
You
in the
got it.
neighborhood.
Right.
So this vision has evolved over the last, let's say, 22 now years.
Yeah.
What type of goals do you guys have? I mean, you kind of talked about it a little bit, but like, I feel like in 2025, we're going to look at this neighborhood and it's going to be something truly special, what you guys are building.
Yeah.
Especially with everything coming into fruition, because I mean, in 2024, most of this stuff, hopefully all this stuff will be completed.
Yeah.
So if you could tell the listeners that maybe explain where it is at, because some people are like, where's
sure.
that at? And
Yeah.
then explain what your vision for this neighborhood is going to look like at the end of this year.
God. All right. Well, the
fun.
easy one first.
Where it's at.
Yeah. So yeah, it's Delmar between Union and Kingshighway. So we're west of Kingshighway. That's usually the first landmark that people can reference. It is a, very, very long 2 blocks, if you will. I don't think any of us can really imagine what it's going to be like a year from now, if I'm being honest. I think that even some of the, my employees in third degree and MAID, and there's already this chatter about parking problems, right? Like,
Of course.
the St. Louis
Yeah. Is there parking?
favorite thing to talk about is where to park. It's going to be extremely different to have all of this activity, whether it's lunchtime or, dinner guests coming and going on this section of Delmar. Like, I don't think anyone can really understand that. We've been hosting private events at third degree for almost 22 years. And, on Friday and Saturday nights, we have events that literally take up all of the parking. If you've been to a Third Friday lately, there are Third Fridays where we'll get 600 or 700 people to show up.
Really?
If
Wow.
all these restaurants are there,
That's another 600, 700,000, 2,000, 3,000 people.
yeah, it could get, it's going to get interesting, right? Like, I guess Uber is the answer, but,
Exactly.
we don't, what we don't want to do is build a bunch of parking lots, and we've built some. And a lot of these, that's one of the challenges when you start doing these plans, is that the city will actually require X number of parking spots for your occupancy. And sometimes it's like, really? Like,
It takes
you'd
away
have to
from
take
the
up half the
neighborhood.
street to put the parking in. So
Right.
that's a real problem. I don't have an answer to that one.
Yeah.
Fortunately, knock on wood, hopefully nobody's listening, but there is no metered parking on our section at Delmar. I should whisper
Not
that.
yet. Not until this comes out.
Yeah, I shouldn't have said that out loud. No, but actually one of the big initiatives that we hope this helps with is, not to spend our time talking about cars and parking, but traffic. Right now, that section of Delmar, the speed is just excessive and dangerous. It will slow down just because of the sheer volume, but we do hope that there's some plans for redoing the streetscape that can be put together and pushed through. We now will have a very strong case for that. We've been kind of making the case
It's
for
a big,
years.
wide street, though. It just feels like people pull off Kingshighway and then they're just flying.
It's a drag strip. It's that's probably one of the biggest challenges we have right now. But I'm excited to have all this momentum to hopefully push that forward.
That's incredible. I mean, what you guys are building, and like you said, it's not just you guys now. It's a group of people that have come in, but it starts with you, painting this vision and selling this vision over and over. You're like, hey, we believe in this neighborhood. We invested in here in 2002, and now we're still investing. Every year, you're pouring more and more into this, especially this year. So I want to salute you guys for doing what you're doing, and we're super excited to kind of support that vision. But I want to talk about St. Louis as a whole before we wrap up here. So you choose to live in St. Louis. You choose to, buy and build and sell real estate, build real estate, buy businesses, give back to the city of St. Louis. What does the city mean to you in that fact of why you keep pouring more and more into it? Because a lot of people do that, and then they're like, man, I'm gonna go out to the county now. I've done my stuff. So like, what makes you keep investing?
I've been attracted to the architecture for as long as I can remember. Big fan of how things used to be built and made, and the care and the time that was put into crafting these things. So for me, that's one of the biggest things, is saving this stuff. We've done our best to save all the buildings, sometimes at what seems like a very unreasonable cost. That's a huge part of it. It's a great city, right? There's so much here. People come to Third Degree and they say like, wow, I would never expect this in St. Louis. Like, we hear that a lot. Like, they say things like, oh, I could see this in New York. It's like, okay, good. Well, it's here. And there's so many things like that. At our Third Friday events every month, if I'm narrating in front of the crowd, I will poll them. I will say, how many of you have been here before?
Mm-hmm.
And after doing that consistently every Third Friday of every month, except for the pandemic and a couple of ice storms, I can't get more than 50% of the people to raise their hands every time. And then you start doing the math and you take, like loose population of the region, and you start dividing it by, 12 months, and let's say there's 100 people in the audience. It's like, oh, well, then you start to see like it's going to take a really long time to get everybody in St. Louis to show up for one of these events.
Right.
So much potential, right? Like for all of us, for all of these restaurants, we have a big population.
Yeah. I think it's over 3 million in the greater.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, you can find a lot of people that have been to Third Degree or made Craft Alliance, but you can find a whole lot of people that haven't.
Yeah.
And same thing for the restaurants, right? Like all of these restaurants, like to be honest, like I had only been to, I think 2 of Ben's restaurants before all this happened.
Yeah. And it's right down the street.
There's a lot of choices, and half the time you don't even know what they are.
Yeah.
And now it's getting easier and easier to sort of look geographically. What I think the biggest thing that we're all excited about is this truly makes this a destination. So instead of saying like, hey, let's go to a specific restaurant, people will really be able to say like, well, let's just go to the Delmar Makers District. Like there's 8 choices.
Let's figure it out.
Yeah.
Or
like
let's go in here and
you
pop
can pull
into
up
Third
the
Degree.
app and like you can try to hop on Open Table and literally pick your restaurant geographically.
Yeah.
Or you could just be like, well, let's just go see if we can get a table. And if you don't, you can walk down the street to the next option. My wife and I love doing stuff like that.
Yeah,
it's like, well, we're going to try to sneak in right now. We got somebody
It takes
to
a
watch
lot of
the
effort
kids.
to really plan. And it's like a lot of anxiety because then you're like, oh, yeah, I don't really want that tonight. And then you're like, okay, well, let me look at something else. And then you don't ever end up going anywhere.
Or you decide and then you go and there's like no reservations, or at least there isn't any on the app, and you're like, is this real? Or and then you show up and like there's actually plenty of room and you're like, damn it, all right, like you could have come earlier.
But now it's like a destination, like you said. It's like something that people in St. Louis can be proud of like, let me go to a Friday event at Third Degree, and then after that I'm gonna go get a cocktail at Esca, or I'm gonna get an ice cream, depending on how you're feeling at that certain time,
or dinner before.
And then you guys are gonna do some events, bigger events, outdoor events, and different things like that with what you guys are doing. So talk to me a little bit about that.
Totally just kind of skipped over that, but one of the things we decided to do, we built a parking lot for Made in the Magic House. I thought I had this great idea to not haul off all the soil that we had to excavate, so I was like, oh, we'll just turn it into this giant earthen berm like an amphitheater. It ended up being like far more expensive to do that than to just haul off the dirt. But we now have this beautiful grass hill. We're calling it Maker Hill, of course. Where we can't wait to start having outdoor concerts. So yet another free concert in St. Louis. We've seen the success at the Garden. The History Museum has their series. We hope to launch our own series in the near future and give people another great opportunity.
Free thing to do with their family.
Enjoy the music, hop into one of the restaurants. Maybe watch someone blow some glass, or sign up to take a class. Learn how to do some wood turning.
Exactly. I know I've been looking at your guys' website and I'm like, dang, I didn't know that they had that. And they're at all different levels too. Like you have this experience level where you're going to spend a few $100 at Third Degree and get this really hands-on one. But then you can go over to Made and actually do some things, date nights, bring your kids, have your kids go upstairs. You guys are doing something. There's so many different things that you guys can do. I'm super inspired by it. I know we could talk about it all day, but I know you guys are going to be sharing some stuff online on the Delmar Makers District on Instagram. And then there's going to be a bunch of new press articles been coming out. A lot of press has been getting written up about what's coming in the neighborhood. So and that's not going to stop either. So that's really cool too. It's pretty cool to take a step back, and that's one thing of advice that I always give to everybody that's building a business is like, take a step back and like look at the street. And I hope you do this sometimes. You're always working. You were just rushing from a meeting just to get here. And you're about to rush to go get your kids after this, but you take a step back and just look at all the construction going on, and then just be like, okay, this is why we're doing it. And then that gets you to show up that next day. But it is the STL Bucket List show. So I have one last question. The STL Bucket List question. What are a few things that would be on your family's bucket list? Maybe some date night spots that you and your wife do, or some events that you and your kids do together, or even plug some of your own stuff like, hey, bucket list spot.
I think I've plugged enough of my stuff. So I would say like one of my favorite kind of hidden gems, I'm sure there's literally millions of people that haven't been there, Bull Rush. So it's sort of the top of the list.
They just
in
got another
terms of-
award, didn't they? Another James Beard
I
Award?
think so. I can't keep up with Rob, but
yeah, he's killing it.
it's a really unique experience.
Yeah.
Like it's unlike anything else you'll do in St. Louis food wise. I can name lots of restaurants that I like, but and then like to go to, well, actually it's kind of a similar vein, like not in the city, but nearby. Like, we love escaping to Innsbruck on occasion. That's another one of those things where people are like, what's Innsbruck?
Yeah. The A-frames and all the beautiful.
Yeah. It's a great getaway.
Kind of out by, I grew up in Wentzville, so out that way west. So,
Yeah.
It's a bright city, I think.
Man, other bucket list stuff. Favorite place for a quick cocktail or a long one. Brennan's is always at the top of my list.
Yeah.
I spend too much time there probably.
Yeah. It's a good spot.
Sorry, Kevin. I'll probably be cheating on you more on Delmar soon.
Yeah.
And with the kids, like, well, I mean, my kids I think they could practically run the zoo, or at least a couple of them could. It's always a popular spot. But, all the usual suspects for me.
Yeah, no, that's amazing. There is so much stuff, and everybody's list is different. But Doug, I appreciate you for taking the time.
Oh, of course, man.
If you could, just to wrap up, just share a few of the websites that people can follow to kind of stay up to date with stuff.
Yeah. So they're pretty straightforward. So DelmarMakerDistrict.org is for the district there. ThirdDegreeGlassFactory.com. Made STL, not to be confused with STL Made. But Made STL. We've got CraftAlliance.org on the street there, and of course the Magic House as well.
Yeah.
And Ben, the entire Benjelina.com group there.
Yep.
And then all of our new tenants coming on board here are pretty easy to find, in terms of the Fountain and Steve's.
Social media has been so great for that type of stuff. It's so cool to kind of connect with people.
Super fast.
Because used to be people had blogs and you'd be like, oh, what are they up to? And it's like now you just go on Instagram and you're just like, boom, boom, boom. And you're on Instagram all the time, it seems like now.
For
better or for worse.
A little bit too much, maybe. Yeah, it depends on who you ask, I guess.
Your wife's like, are you sure you really need to be on Instagram right now?
Yeah.
You're like, hey, it's business. We got to keep it rolling. But Doug, hey, thanks for coming on, man. Appreciate it.
Thank you. It was a pleasure.
Yes, sir. Thanks again for tuning in to the STL Bucket List Show. This podcast is presented by Bankhead and Firth Ortho. Bankhead and Firth is family-friendly and family-focused right here in St. Louis. They just celebrated their 50-year anniversary, and they have 5 locations that are all near you right here in St. Louis. Head over to their website at bankheadandfirthortho.com.
Today, they rep St. Louis, yeah. They rep St. Louis. They rep St. Louis.